to talk about conversion optimization, and we'll cover a bit of its history, some tactics that it includes, key value propositions, and then really if you guys are interested in getting started in conversion optimization for your organization, what that would look like. A bit more about our organization, Adept Marketing, and some of you might be familiar with our logo and realize that it looks a little bit different. So, side note, we are undergoing a brand refresh and actually building a new website, and you guys get a sneak peek of what that looks like tonight. So, we are a growing group. We're about 40 strong now, and at our core, we are acquisition focused and really data oriented digital marketing and web development agency. So that is Adept. And that last part, the acquisition focused and being data oriented, kind of leads into why we are talking about conversion optimization. So we work with a lot of clients who spend a lot of time and money and resources on marketing and also their websites. And kind of one foundational question that is always in their minds and in our mind is, how do we maximize our efforts? And that question was what led us to building out our practice of conversion optimization and analytics. One thing, and this is why we wanted to demonstrate that, one element that touches all of these aspects of marketing and web design and development is analytics and conversion optimization. So a lot of times discussions are happening around marketing or the website, and analytics and conversion considerations might actually get overlooked or undervalued, and in reality we think that they're of the utmost importance. So, and very important in helping kind of answer that question of how do you maximize your efforts.
So I'm going to start today off with a little story. Does everyone remember this guy? I know it seems like forever ago. I know I'm like super loud too compared to Sarah because I'm holding the mic up to my mouth. So this is 2008. Barack Obama is in the middle of his primary, and he decides to go give a presentation at the offices at Google. And he's giving a talk on the convergence of government and technology. And there's a guy sitting in the room, his name is Dan Soroker, and he's a product manager. And he's really inspired by this talk, and he decides to leave his really nice job at Google and fight the fight and join the campaign. And so he joins as the director of analytics of the campaign. As part of that role, he wanted to help improve the performance of their campaign website. And so him and his team got together. They had some discussions around what they wanted to do. And they decided they wanted to take a more scientific, structured approach to how they improve the site, rather than sort of making assumptions around what changes that they would make. And so other companies and organizations were doing similar things at the time, but they essentially hobbled together some technology, brought some data scientists in, and really kind of ran the current version of the campaign site against a number of different variations. And the goal was to see which variation performed the best. And so they ran this test, and they had, again, 6 to 7 different options or variations. And one of them was Barack sort of surrounded by his supporters. They had another of Barack sort of a little bit more in focus as the imagery there. They had a version of Barack sort of surrounded by his family. And then they had a version of Barack in a video giving a presentation. And so they had some assumptions internally around which version they thought was going to win. A lot were voting on the video. They thought that was going to really drive an emotional response, and people were going to decide to donate more. But what they found is that they were pleasantly surprised. It was actually the version of Barack surrounded by his family that actually outperformed the other versions. In fact, when they actually launched this new design and ran all the math, they were able to show that they generated over $60 million in additional donation funds and increased email signups by over 40%. So some pretty big numbers. And so Dan took this knowledge and he left the campaign and decided to start his own company called Optimizely. And Optimizely, if you're not already familiar, I'm sure a lot of you are, is a software platform that allows you to run similar type of testing on your website. And so essentially, even though A/B testing is really one component or one technique in conversion optimization, it truly is really the definition. Tim Ash, I think, said it best. He said it's the art and science of getting people to act once they arrive at your website. And if I could sort of break this definition out a little bit, first, it's an art. There's definitely a creative component to SEO. There's some risk-taking involved, especially when you're experimenting on a site. It's also a science, right? There's a framework involved. It's a matter of getting quantitative and qualitative research, creating a hypothesis, testing that hypothesis, evaluating your results, and then optimizing continuously. So, and the last part is it's really all about getting people to act once they're on their website. And that could be a micro conversion, like a add to cart, hitting a particular button, viewing a particular page. Obviously, those drive into your macro conversions, which could be revenue, lead generation, sales. And so obviously we talked a little bit about the benefit of SEO with the Obama story, but if I could drill into that a little bit deeper, it's all about being a data-driven approach. So traditional scenario in a marketing department might be a VP of marketing and a CEO sitting in a room and sort of talking about different website design ideas. And they could have some disagreements, and they may decide to go with one version. Typically, it might be the highest paid person in the room's version of the site. With SEO, we want to have a data-driven approach. So we want to obviously bring some quantitative and qualitative data to the table when we have those discussions. And then secondly, we want to test those and then obviously have ongoing data analysis through the process. Secondly, it's all about uncovering user insights. So I'll go into a little bit more about some of the research techniques to doing that. But we want to know what our customers and prospects' preferences are on our site. We want to know what they care about, what they like. And SEO it's a very important part of the process. Next is the impact to value proposition and other business goals. This is often an area that's not thought about, but for example, we're working with a client now, they're a manufacturer, and we're doing some testing around some of their value propositions. So basically they have like 4 or 5 different areas that they feel are their value proposition in the market, and we're displaying that messaging prominently on the site. And we're testing to see which version customers interact with more, engage with more. So a really good way to evaluate value proposition, and that can help to drive different business models, that can help to drive strategy, the way a company operates. So I want you to think about SEO beyond just a website and think about how the larger impacts it can have to a company itself. Next is obviously it improves site performance. So beyond just conversion rate and conversions, conversion optimization can impact engagement on a site. It can impact a number of different metrics beyond just conversions like I just talked about. And then lastly, it's really about mitigating risk as well. So we work with a large e-commerce client. They do about 2 to 3 million visitors every few days. And if we were to test versions across 50% of their traffic or 75% of their traffic, that could have huge performance impacts. So we look at 10% of their traffic and do testing there. And then if a version we find variation works, then we'll roll that out to the entire site. So really, controlling risk is part of the SEO process. So all sounds great. Obviously, a lot of great things if you're not currently doing it. But what are the reasons why we don't do it? And there are a couple of myths or misconceptions. One is that it's too expensive. And Sarah will kind of go into the investment piece of this, but I would argue that it could be too costly not to do it. One reason I just talked about, like the mitigating risk factor. You could be rolling out a version of a site that actually hurts performance, and we've seen that as an agency. We've seen that in case studies that we've read. So really, it's not thinking about it as an expense, but as an investment. The other part of that is, you're investing a lot into your generating traffic, but how much are you investing in actually turning that traffic into sales and leads? The next part of that is people think it's the same thing as split testing or A/B testing. Obviously, the Obama campaign is a great example of how A/B testing works, but it's really more than that. It's the research component of it. It's the other techniques and tactics that we'll kind of talk about, but it's more than just split testing. And then a lot of people think that it's only for enterprise companies, but really it's for companies of all sizes. And really what changes is the techniques and the scale of your approach within each of these. So it's definitely for low traffic sites, it's for large enterprise companies, it's for B2B, it's for B2C. We have clients all across the board that use it. Again, it's really the scale of your approach So smaller sites, we may do user testing, but a smaller sample size. We may do bigger experiments, bolder designs, because we know we can get a better result that way versus doing smaller changes on a larger site. The process really kind of similar to other project management or web development processes, but really we will do research and analysis up front. Could last anywhere from a few weeks to a month, and we'll talk about some of those different research techniques. Obviously, it's going to involve planning, so taking that research and then creating a roadmap for the year, and then obviously following that roadmap. Design, obviously you'll have design and development involved in creating tests. The implementation, which is obviously implementing the technology you'll need to do any kind of A/B testing, and then implementing your actual tests within your testing platform. And then obviously the optimized process, which is continuing, is ongoing. So here's some of the research methods that we use and other conversion optimization practitioners use. And we'll kind of dive into each of these here in a little bit more detail. First is user testing. So obviously 2 ways to do this. Kind of the old school way is to actually get people into a room and actually have them sit in front of a computer and watch their behavior on a particular website or doing certain tasks. We use a platform to allow us to do it remotely. So really we're inviting either a particular demographic or actual customers to do this test, and they'll sort of run through a number of tasks. So if you're not familiar with user testing, I'm going to have Sarah play kind of an example here.
Walk us through your process of finding a maple baseball bat for power hitters. Okay, so we want a maple baseball bat for power hitters. Usually, I'll be honest, I just use a search function. So we're just going to see here what the selection of maple baseball bats is like.
Yep, I guess that was it. After this point, he mentions that he gets frustrated because he can't find the wood baseball bats. The results that he got weren't specific to what his expectations were. So just a quick example of sort of some of the findings you can get from user testing to help inform further tests that you might do. And in addition to just testing on a website, it's also very useful for actually watching people perform a search and understanding their behavior, actually performing searches for your products, and then also looking at competitive sites and getting their sense of what how they feel about competitor sites, what they feel is important or valuable. So the next is session replays. So this is actually recording people on a site through a platform, and then if Sarah, if you could play that example. So you're able to see kind of where they're clicking, what they're doing. In this particular example, they actually did a search at the top search bar there. They put in AZ for the state, Arizona, but they got an error message that said you actually have to enter the city and state. And it wasn't very clear to them that that was that was an error, that was not the right thing to enter. So again, another way to watch your website visitors interacting with your site and get a sense of where they're having issues, where they may be having errors, where there may be JavaScript errors occurring. There are some tools that actually automatically pull that data in and give you sort of a feed of where their visitors are having issues. So another tool there. Another thing we do is obviously competitive assessment. So we'll look at competitive sites and look for opportunities for improvement. This particular example is a rewards program for another bat manufacturer that we thought was a really well done, really good experience that our current client could replicate or do something even better than that. So another way to uncover some ideas, testing ideas. Obviously, we're all here. We all know Google Analytics really well. At least I would hope so. Obviously, a really good tool for uncovering testing ideas. This is just a quick report on sort of top landing pages and where there's some bounce rate how the bounce rate compares to the average bounce rate on those pages. So potential opportunities there for the bounce rate that's not very good. This is actually Jenny's top pages here, so something we're looking at for improving their site. Another thing is their usability review. So this is obviously a more subjective analysis. In this particular case, we're looking at a software platform and evaluating it based on a number of different factors. So looking at navigation, learnability, the clarity, efficiency of users to complete tasks, and then we would score it based on each of those factors throughout the site. So again, a little bit more subjective, but another data point to add. And then, of course, heat mapping. On the left there is a click map, so being able to see where people are actually engaging with content. Pretty powerful stuff. And then on the right is a scroll map, so seeing how deep on a page they're scrolling. A lot of times we've seen different experiences on a mobile device versus a desktop, and that can help determine what design layout we decide on that particular device. And then this is surveys, so you can do like little pop-up surveys you can have them appear on certain pages or appear after a certain time period. Again, getting some more qualitative data. This particular one is asking about whether this page is providing the information that they would expect. And then again, another data point there. And then also, a little more obviously, but talking with customer service reps and actually interviewing them and understanding where customers are having issues or problems, understanding what their needs are can help inform ideas on testing. Also looking at actual chat logs from websites could be very helpful. Oops. I think I hit the, what do you got here? No, it's all I think. I hit play. So once you get all this research and get all this data, the next step is to do some internal brainstorming, bring that data to the table, and then develop a testing plan. And this is sort of over the year. Here's the tests we may expect to run. And on the right there is a platform we use. It's called Experiment Engine, and allows you to basically manage your testing plan. On the little bubbles there are. You can set priorities to each of your test concepts. And we use a prioritization framework where we look at the potential impact of a test, the level of effort. So do we need developers and designers involved? How much time do we need involved? And then effort, impact, and potential. Are we running this on a particular page? We're running it across site-wide. What's the total amount of visitors that we're impacting? So,
Awesome. So I'm sure by now you're all like, this is great. How do I get started? So there are kind of two key ways that you could roll out conversion optimization within your organization. And one is managing CO with your own team, so doing it internally. And we wanted to walk you through what both options would look like if you wanted to get started. And the other, obviously, is managing with a partner of some type. So this is assuming you are not currently doing conversion optimization, but you're interested in possibly doing it, and really what are the next steps. So the first step is developing a business case. And this is looking at, as Dave mentioned, what is it actually going to take to roll this out? So what would the cost be for what tools we want, what tactics that Dave covered would we want to include, what do those things cost, what would it cost to actually run on our site, what would it cost to implement? Another piece is, do we have the resources in-house to actually do this? So do we have developers, designers? Do we have someone who knows analytics really well? Do we have someone who knows these tools, or would we have to learn that? So can it actually be done in-house, or would we need to hire potentially? The other piece that's very important to look at when building a business case is what is the potential impact to your business? So what is your conversion rate right now? Where does that stack against, is that a good conversion rate? Could it be improved? If you were going to go the testing route, so you want to use a testing tool and start testing across your website, what is your site traffic and what is your conversion rate? And then those two pieces will dictate how many tests you can actually run on your traffic to statistical significance. So there's a whole bunch of pieces that come into play, and maybe you run all the numbers and it looks great, and if you can even improve conversion rate, you win 20% or 30% of your tests. You don't even have to win very many to improve conversion rate enough where it's gonna be profitable. We wanna do this. The next piece that's going to most likely need to happen will be educating essentially the rest of the team, right, in your organization on what conversion optimization is, the business case, what the impact is going to be. A lot of it is getting people excited. So once you can create kind of a mentality of testing and the thought of like, hey, all of these things can be tested and we should really research this. Let's look at the data. Once you can get people thinking that, it's kind of like catches fire where you have all of the different teams starting to think in that mentality, and that's really great. So it's a big piece of its education. The next piece of it is going to be creating a strategy and a plan to execute. So if you decide maybe you're going to do, that you're going to do heat mapping, that you're going to do user testing, you're going to roll out Optimizely A/B testing, you're going to do all of these things. A big piece of it that Dave talked about is the process is incredibly important. So doing the research, determining what aspects of your site are going to be most impactful to test on, what should be tested, should it be tested across devices, or do you have a specific device that could really benefit from an improvement in conversion rate? So the plan and process of creating your actual roadmap for rolling this out is incredibly important. The other piece that's really important, depending on the size of your organization, is just a structure to who runs the test, who's responsible for doing what. We have worked with a lot of agents or a lot of companies where we've come in as their partner, and they have Optimizely, but literally there are 30 different departments running tests in there. No one's talking, no one knows what these tests are. Some of them are overlapping, and it's kind of a mess. So the process and structure is extremely important. The next is implementing the right technologies. So there are going to be some tools that, depending on the size of your site, depending on the size of your traffic, there are going to be some tools that might make more sense for you than others. And so that's just making sure that you have the right tools and that you get those implemented. Structure and process, sorry, my bad. Structure and process, we talked about that one a little bit, and the delivery. So that is really just monitoring, making sure that that's happening and that all of the roles have kind of been divvied out. This is we're a big fan of Optimizely. We're a certified partner. We like them a lot. They're not the only testing tool we use because some clients have different needs, but they do have a really good article on building an effective optimization team. So we just wanted to provide that. So the other option, maybe you look at some of those things and you're like, hey, it could be super profitable, but we would have to hire someone and we'd have to hire a couple people maybe, and not sure that that actually makes sense for us. So what would it look like to work with a partner? So that obviously is something we know a lot about what that looks like too. So one piece that's very important is there might be aspects of it that you guys do want to handle in-house. So you have a team, maybe your analytics team or your web development design team, they want to be part of it, but they don't want to have to handle all of it. So it's identifying what aspects of the team can you guys handle in-house, and where are the gaps that you would actually need to outsource? Because that's an important part of it, right? Because then you can go and look for a partner who, we need someone who specifically can do the development and design, who knows Optimizely, and you can kind of have like a list of, this is what we can handle, this is what we would want you to handle. The other nice piece about a partner is that if you find a good partner, they really should help you build the business case, either build it for you or help you build it. So that's one kind of nice piece of that. If you go the partner route, that's one thing to keep in mind, that they should be bringing that to the table. Another very important aspect of working with a partner is making sure that they actually understand your business objectives, right? So are they hearing you when you're saying that you want to obviously improve your leads, but it's also important that you understand, what are your unique value propositions? Like there might be some things outside of just improving conversions that are important to you to understand through this process. Are they hearing you? Are they, building tests based on what is important to you? That you align on strategy, execution, and process. So kind of all of the things I said for the last slide still apply to this side. So it still should be an extremely structured process of here's exactly how we're going to make this happen, because I'm sure as you noticed, as Dave talked through all of the tactics, there can be a lot of moving pieces. There can be a lot of qualitative and quantitative research and analysis. Someone needs to be combining that. Someone needs to be putting that into some type of summary and takeaway of here's our hypothesis, here's what we're going to test, here is the takeaway, or we found these issues, here's the priority of fixing them, and here's how we're going to roll it out. And then the other very important piece when working with a partner is they really need to be proving their value. And I'm sure that you also have to prove their value because it's going to be a cost, right? So there should be what we call a measurement framework. So they should be outlining kind of here's what success looks like. Here is how we're going to get there, all of the assumptions that go into how we would get there, and then tracking to that, providing reports to you on tests completed, win rate, impact to conversion rate, all of those things, and some type of digestible format too. So I think we did a screenshot. This is an example ROI model. It's a lot easier when a client is e-com to put these together. This literally impacts your wins, your impacted viewers of the website, of the people who actually saw that test, what their original value was, what their new value was, what that could look like 6 months out, what that could look like 12 months out. It also takes into consideration, or should take into consideration, should be something that you would want to think about too, losses, because you're going to have losses. It's going to happen. So the traffic that you tested on where it was a test that lost, that was very likely lost leads or revenue. So what does that look like? And just making sure that it balances. One thing that we definitely think is true, and you'll hear this from Optimizely over and over again, but I'd say that they probably have more reason to tell you this than we would, is that losses can be really valuable as well. So if something loses, we look at it as an opportunity to try to dive into analytics, into by device, into by channels driving that traffic, and can we figure out why? If we think it's a strong hypothesis of why we were testing this, then it might just be something where it was device specific, or it was it can be a lot of different things. So we try to dig into why tests do lose. And then obviously your tool costs and your management costs, all of that should be included in your ROI assessment as well. Make sure that you are netting positively for the program. So we talked about a couple of these just now, but we wanted to give you guys a nice concise list of what we would consider key metrics to track. So conversion rate is one that is very important, and we definitely, a lot of times that's kind of like the key thing that we're looking at, but it's definitely not the only thing that we're looking at, and sometimes it's not actually even to what we test to. So conversion rate, we want to look at, obviously though, the count of leads and the revenue and AOV that different tests that you are doing, how that is impacting your site. Another thing is win rate. So I kind of mentioned that before, if you were working with a partner, one thing that they might talk about or mention is going to be like a potential win rate or an assumed win rate. And this is looking at, so you might be doing 100 tests, and we know that on average we win about 70 or 80% of the tests that we run. We actually really put a lot of value on win rate because we feel like if you're doing a lot of the upfront research before you're running the test, a lot of times you're going to win. You're still going to lose sometimes, but you'll win more often than not. So that is definitely something that is an important metric to look at and consider. Test velocity is another one. This is essentially, it is dependent on your site traffic and your conversions, how many tests you can run, but it's a little bit more than that too, right? So if you're an e-commerce site and you want to do a test across product pages, and you know that you need to run it to statistical significance, you can use a calculator essentially to plug in all of these numbers and determine we will have to run a test for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 week, depending on our current traffic, to actually reach statistical significance. So every test that we put together, that's one piece that we look at, is assuming a whole bunch of things related to statistics that I won't bore you with, but assuming that these things actually happen, we'll have to test for approximately 1 week, or we'll have to test for approximately 2 weeks for this to hit statistical significance. You run it to that, you check it, and then you rinse and repeat. Interactions per visit. So this is, Dave mentioned, one other thing that you'll want to keep track of is just how is this impacting your overall performance. You just don't want to be so tunnel vision that you're only looking at revenue and you're not really looking at how this is necessarily impacting the interactions with the rest of your site. So these are just a couple things, if you're going to get started, to make sure that you are thinking about.
So I'm going to talk through a couple of case studies, and we had like 10 of these, but we narrowed it down to 2 just because
we decided you'd be bored by now.
Yeah, I figured you'd be bored by now, falling asleep. So this is an example of these are both recent examples. This is a B2B case study of a client. Actually, I believe it might be a Rev1 company. But we essentially we're testing their landing pages, and obviously their goal as a B2B software company is to get leads. And really, the major change we did here was we sort of changed the ask, right? Rather than request a free demo, we changed it, and obviously we did some design changes as well, but we changed it to watch a 4-minute demo. And obviously, really simple psychology here, but the concept is, I really don't want to request a free demo because the sales guy's going to call me. I'm going to have to set up an hour appointment. Then he's going to call me, follow up with me 10 times. I really just want to see the product quickly. And get sort of a sense of what it is. So the idea here was just letting your customers view the video quickly rather than going through a whole demo process. So
what's the difference there caused by the title, or do you believe you redesigned the contact page, design there? Do you equate it or attribute it to redesign, or just changing the title?
I really attribute it to the actual title, the actual ask. And we could have gone through and sort of narrowed it down to really small changes, but for this particular client, given the amount of traffic that they were generating on these particular pages, it made sense to just do a broader design change plus add that element. And so obviously results here, we're able to increase conversion rate by 85%. So some pretty good results there. Next example, JEGS, one of our clients, talked earlier about how they, obviously a lot of visitors, several million over a couple days. We've noticed that a lot of their sales and traffic has significantly increased on mobile devices. So part of our roadmap was really focusing on changing mobile. And the idea of this test was really just to kind of clean up and simplify the cart. Really focusing on the checkout now, getting rid of some of the distractions there, with the goal of really getting people to focus on checking out, getting through the process, not getting confused, not trying to do more searches, just kind of getting from point A to point B. And obviously we were able to demonstrate increase in revenue and completed purchases. So if you're at the point where you're like, hey, this looks great, I want to start getting more involved with conversion optimization, have a structured process. Here's some of the things you might start to look at. Obviously looking at your site traffic, analyzing some of that in GA, doing a conversion assessment, so where do opportunities exist overall, do some industry benchmarking, so how does our conversion rate compare to other competitors or the industry as a whole, and other metrics. Doing a channel analysis, so looking at each of your channels and what are the conversion rates in each of those channels, where are some areas that we can focus on. Looking at your testing capacity based on your current traffic. Sarah kind of talked about some of that. And then just identifying gaps where you need to do more user research or try other techniques in user research. I think that was it, so we're open for Any questions?